Hey everybody, it's start of week 13, my favorite number, so I thought maybe I would, I'm feeling lucky, I thought I would make a video. I haven't made one for a while. I put up a schedule for this week. I've had to start a third course schedule link at the top here. Schedule 3, let me try to bounce that up for you a little bit. So, course schedule 3, week 13. Has all the elements in there. I'm not going to go over that in detail. I think it's pretty straightforward. It really comes down to completing your proposal this week, and I give you some steps for thinking about how to do that. The main step I want to spend some time with, though, is actually the report itself. Marie did a nice job of posting way back on March 25th the report that she and her group wrote last year. We didn't take any time to go over that in detail back then, but this seems like the right time to do that. I think both groups are getting ready to focus in on producing a document, and so let's take a little look. First thing to notice is that Marie gave you a number of process steps that they followed. Certainly take a look at those and get a sense of how their work flowed. But then down at the bottom is a link to a Word document that I hope all of you can access. It comes up here as a 25-page document. Quite honestly, that was a little more substantial than I expected, but not way above, and they definitely did an outstanding job with the assignment, in part because of the time and effort that they put into it. In part, it was also driven by working with an organization that had already started into social media. Quite a few different channels, has 6 programs running within its organization, so there was a lot for them to work with there. So 25 pages and all of their suggestions were not out of order. I do want to say that while this is a great model in many ways, it by no means will be something that either group can reproduce, because the organizations that you're working with are so different. Their needs are going to be different. Your assessment of their websites and their social media is going to be different, so please don't try to just copy what's been done here. I don't think that'll work very well for you. That said, I want to go over 6 highlights of this particular report, kind of just a broad overview. Again, not necessarily a detailed analysis. I think you can read the document and get some of the details from it. I want to just start with the professionalism. That's the first point you can see right off the bat. It might be a little too big. Right off the bat, they do a nice job of setting up a cover page using the organization's logo in here. They're really approaching this as consultants, and that's one of the things that I mentioned in the week 13 notes, is that I'm asking you to assume the role of consultants, and that means produce a professional looking document. I see they called themselves the AJM for the first letters of their names. I think I saw that one of our groups has done something similar, and they call themselves consultants. So right on track. And you can see they were about a week ahead of where we are. So the pressure's on. This is the week to get things done. They start with, just to build a few points on the professionalism. I won't go into that in detail, but they start with a cover letter that follows the professional title page. And the thing to notice here is what they're really referencing is the process and the relationship, and that's very important as a consultant, that you're not just dropping a report on somebody, but you've hopefully met with them. You're saying, here's some ideas, these are the best ideas we have at this point. We're also open to your feedback down here, meeting with them and revising it. I mentioned in the schedule that this is a great strategy. If you wanted to copy one thing from here, this letter actually is pretty impressive and perhaps worth copying in a lot of ways. But they're open to that. If you do a good job, they did a good job, that your organization isn't likely to ask for any changes, but be open to that. And then third thing, in terms of a couple of other things actually, in terms of professionalism, table of contents, because they got to such a length. Again, that wasn't something that I put down in the assignment sheet. It must contain a table of contents, and so be thinking about that too. I encourage you to reread the assignment sheet, but because this is a service learning assignment, because you have a real audience and a real situation, I can't anticipate all of the things that you need to do. This is a 400 level class. I know many of you are in grants and proposals and have taken other business and professional writing classes, so draw on all of that knowledge to make the best document you can, just as this group did here with its table of contents and its executive summary. And those are both products of having produced a long report, and they saw the need for those elements to come into the report. Your groups might not have that same need. So I'll stop there with professionalism. They got off to a tremendous start in this report, and those sorts of things are certainly worth modeling, as well as little things like page numbers and repeating their consulting agency's name. The next point I wanted to make is that they do a great job of doing both the website analysis or the social media analysis and providing a proposal. Now in the assignment sheet it's sort of laid out like you would do one half and then you would do the other half. But again, it's not that I will be looking for that. As long as there is content analysis and proposal in there, they can be mingled. And in a lot of ways it makes sense to do that. You as a group will look at their website and say, the front page needs this, here's how we're going to fix it. It's a very common, from poetry, it's a very common pattern. We can either go, you know, A, B, B, C, C, or we can go A, B, B, C, C, C. I don't know. Sorry, I don't teach poetry very often. But hopefully you got what I meant, right? So you can mingle these in the way that are most effective to you. What they went with were really 5 objectives or themes that they wanted to suggest to the organization, and so they used the A-B combination there to both analyze and then propose something new in doing that. So whatever is going to work for your situation, I am open to that, as long as there is both analysis of the existing media and channels and proposals for changes. The third thing that I want to mention, and here's where you really won't be able to analyze or to copy them very closely, is that they do, after that first one, which is a really great section, and I think you can learn a lot from that, I won't say any more there, is that they do go into individual platform analysis. And you might do that, but the 2 things that are going to happen here is that this organization had a lot of different platforms and channels already up and running, and so the group had to work with that, but then they also suggested some other ones. That probably isn't going to be as good a fit for the organizations that your groups are working with. And the other thing that I think I'm emphasizing more this year than I did last year was really putting that strategy first, or actually the content first, putting the content first and then the strategy. So what does the organization want to communicate? What pictures do they have? What text do they need up there? What video, if they have that, do they need up there? Get that content first, then think about the strategy. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to raise money? Are they trying to build a community? Are they trying to find volunteers? So figure out what their goals are. Got content, you've got strategy, then funnel that into the channels. Okay, what are the best channels for telling the organization's story? Blogging is good for a longer form expression. What's a good way for sharing photos? Perhaps a daily photo on Twitter, perhaps a photo album on Flickr or on Facebook, things like that. So this will be different than the report, and that's not a criticism of the report. They worked very much within the confines of their organization and the context of last year's class, but I am encouraging this year's groups to put content and strategy first and then feed that into the channels. The fourth thing that I want to point out that this group did very well, and this one I'll admit you could also borrow quite a bit from, but you might be able to even improve on what they've done here. So they did a great job of making this a document that just isn't informational. They really understood that this was a document that needed to live beyond the course and needed to live beyond the 3 or 4 weeks that they would be working with the organization. And so under the suggested monthly goals, whether the organization follows these or not, at least the writers of this report understood that they wanted to give them a framework for continuing to work. And I'll skip ahead. That's where then they talk about their own work and moving forward, but then they also provide helpful resources. So really those 2 points, the helpful resources and the monthly goals are interactive elements. They're saying to the organization Lakes and Prairies, these are the things you can do here, and they're saying in the resources, these are the books or articles or blogs that you can consult. It's very important. What I would suggest, if you like how they've done this, think again. You do need to think about the right channels. Would this be right for your organization? You might also think about, are there other ways of doing this? The content strategy for web talks about an editorial calendar, something that might be a little bit more visual for them. So instead of 6 Twitter posts, 3 informative, things like that, in week 1 that might even get laid out based on times of day and things like that. And you can do that editorial calendar in Hootsuite, for example, or even set that up for them for a week or so and model that for them. Okay, so they were thinking ahead, and then the 5th thing that I skipped over briefly there that they had sandwiched in there is that timeline for themselves. So this was their timeline for implementing the solutions. Both of your groups will need a timeline for implementing your solutions over weeks 14 through 16. And so again, this one is a great model that you could borrow by all means, but some of you might also be familiar with Gantt charts. There could be more effective visual ways to do this. The other thing that they didn't do here is sort of break it down by person. There would be nothing wrong, and again, this is a great model and it helped them do their work, but it would also be useful to perhaps break it down person by person. So in each week, what is in our one group, what is Allie going to do and what is Michelle going to do, and break it down that way, so that and that's appropriate to the organization. I'll see what you as the consultants are going to do and can get some feedback to you. And then in the other group, what is each individual going to do there? What's Jordan going to do? What's LaWanda going to do? What's Heather going to do? So a couple of different ways to think about that might build on the strength of what's already here. So those are the 5 things that this report does really well, and again, it's a great report that will serve as a nice model, but by no means is it the perfect model, not because it's not a great document, but because your situation is different. I do want to emphasize 3 things. I should have pulled this up, but I'll just mention it, I guess. So I do want you to make sure that you do a content analysis spreadsheet. We spent some time was that about 2 weeks ago, I guess, looking at that, and my example is still available in Google Docs if you want to pick that up for African Soul, American Heart. I would recommend there setting up a content analysis that definitely looks at audience and message and content for each website at the very minimum, and the textbook content strategy for the web has some other suggestions in there. So that's one thing. Sorry, I didn't pull that up. And then another one, Marie did just post this one, is that I would strongly recommend trying to do a network map. So this was something that they didn't do in their group. You don't see that in the report, but Marie and I were just talking about other things that we've covered that might have been useful in there. And so something like this. Again, there's a nice section in Network Nonprofit that talks about how to map your network. This is one model. You could look at that and look at some of the software tools and have other ideas about how you want to map the network for your organization. And you can see that between the spreadsheet and this here, that you would also have a chance to be adding in to your reports sort of more visual elements, things that your organizations can get a handle on. And that they can work with themselves and perhaps use themselves. If these are open-ended tools, their network needs to grow and change. And so if you give them a start to a network map, that will be useful. They need to do their own content analysis every once in a while of their website and of their media channels. And so if you start them with a model, they can build on that. The third thing that I mentioned, and we haven't talked about very much, but it is in content strategy from last week, that is worth looking at, is that idea of the editorial calendar. Whether you use the bullet, certainly the bullet list that this group uses somewhat like an editorial calendar, and they've got their weekly plans, but I've got a couple links in the schedule, and content strategy talks about actually just using a calendar. It's not a very sophisticated idea, but it might take something like this that is still pretty sort of pretty text-based, and turn it into a calendar and it might make it a little bit more concrete for organizations. And if you can set it up in Hootsuite for them, that's a great way to go there as well. So those are 3 new items to be thinking about: content analysis spreadsheet, network map, and then maybe an editorial calendar that could help your organizations. I hope that overview of the report and the assignment is useful to you. Please do, as I mentioned here, make sure you come back to the assignment, check it out. Remember that if you click right on here, you'll go to the main assignment. If you go to here, you'll go to some of the support documents that go with the assignment. But right here really is the main assignment. Breaks it down pretty extensively, gives you an idea where we're at right now. Week 12 and 13, developing the plans. Definitely needs to be finished by week 13, and then the last 3 weeks before exam week will be implementation. I've encouraged you in the schedule to be in contact with your organizations, to be in contact with me, certainly to be in contact with each other. And when I say be done by this week, what I really mean is that I think you need to shoot for a meeting, where have I got it here, a face-to-face by Friday if possible. You really need to get it to them, give them a chance to give you some feedback, if not immediately on Friday, very early next week, because next week you need to be working with that organization, whether it's redoing their website or whether it's helping them learn, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more over the next couple of weeks, that you're also a consultant and trainer helping them learn how to use social media effectively. I'm sure I've gone way over my 8 minutes, hopefully not anywhere near 16. I hope you find this useful and have a good week in electronic communication.